This is the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast, where we share the stories of locals across the country who took that empty lot or that old building and turned it into something awesome that their community needs. I'm Kristi Kandel, and I've been a real estate developer my entire career. My co-host Raphael is a commercial broker, and together we're sharing the stories of locals making a huge impact on their communities. And what we've learned is you don't need millions in the bank or decades of experience to get started. You just need the confidence, tools, and the right people around you. This podcast is your chance to gain the confidence to get in the game, because real estate development isn't just for the insiders anymore. It's for people like you too.
Welcome to the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast. I'm your co-host, Raphael, located here in Louisville, Kentucky. We were just kind of sharing a little bit offline how cold it is in our local market, but we'll navigate this cold weather and ultimately get on the other side. But I'm obviously honored to be here with my co-host, Kristi Kandel, developer extraordinaire. I hope you're staying warm in your neck of the woods.
I mean, for Florida, it's still cold in the 40s, but I'm not going to complain when you guys are talking single digits and negative. So,
Definitely.
Kristi Kandel, real estate developer, investor, and I teach locals how to become developers in their community. And today's guest I found through LinkedIn and just saw the awesome stuff he was talking about and doing. And then we ended up connecting and thought, wow, you'd be a great guest for the show to help our audience kind of see a different perspective. So Desmond, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Appreciate you for reaching out.
Definitely. No. So, I mean, first off, when we first interview guests that we have on the podcast, we like to learn a little bit more about their backstory. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your background and then maybe what got you inspired to get into the development space.
Absolutely. So I'll give you the Cliff Notes version because we'd be here all day.
Mm-hmm.
But my professional background is in sales. And so I've been in various sales positions in various verticals. B2B, B2C, healthcare, retail, you name it, I've done it. But I always knew that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing with my life. It was something that I was good at, but it was also draining. And so through that existential search of what you're supposed to be doing with your life, I realized that I had an affinity for real estate, but I didn't know what I wanted to do in it. I just enjoyed all things real estate. And so on my journey of trying to figure out what that looked like, I have ADHD, and so real estate is one of those subjects I can hyper focus on, and hours seem to feel like minutes. And so I would consume everything on real estate. I've looked into syndication. I've looked into fixing and flipping, buying and holding. Any type of real estate that you can think of, I have looked into it and was trying to navigate my way. So then me and my brother decided to start flipping homes to eventually retire my mom. We did that a couple times, realized that that wasn't quite the business model that we wanted to do in our community. And so by that time, because of my ADHD, I had an extensive knowledge of the UDO code or the zoning code in Raleigh. I used to do an exercise once I realized that I liked development. I realized that in order to get reps at being a developer, you need a lot of money. And so I needed a way to get reps because I didn't have money. And so I would just go on Zillow and I would find a random lot in my section of city. I'm in Raleigh, specifically Southeast Raleigh. And I would literally click find, and I would literally act like I was a developer. And I would go through everything, like zoning code, setbacks, calling contractors to get quotes. It was that intense. And I had done that over and over again. So imagine every time me and my wife sit down at night and she's watching whatever TV show at the time, that's what I'm doing. And I'm doing that day after day after day. And after you do that, you start to see trends. You start to notice things start to come quicker. And so I noticed that we could turn split level homes into duplexes and walkout basements into duplexes. And that's what we did. So we did that before the market caught up to us and realized that's what we were doing. And so that kind of got me into I like this feeling of helping people. We got a chance to help single mothers that were evicted out of their previous home. We got a chance to put them in homes and they're still my tenants today. We got a chance to do some really cool things. And I try to figure out how can I scale this feeling? I got involved with the city because I didn't want to be a passive participant in my city. I wanted to be active. I wanted to know what was going on, go to city council meetings. things of that nature. And so I got really, really cool with a lot of the city officials and the planning department, housing and neighborhood. And then I got pulled into a really, really big project that is going on in Southeast Raleigh. We have a bus rapid transit line that's going to be almost $1 billion that's going to be invested in this first leg of the bus rapid transit line. And there's a 5-acre site that sits right at the beginning of that. It's right in the heart of Southeast Raleigh that used to be the old DMV. And I got involved with that project. I got pulled into that by a woman that I went to high school with. She works on the communications department in the city of Raleigh. She gave me a call and was like, "Hey, I need you to help um, like translate and navigate this process because we are bringing the community in to help guide what the RFP is going to look like. And we need you to help kind of translate to both sides because I was from that community. I could talk to the community members and they knew me. They watched me grow up. They watched my children grow up, but I could also understand what the planners were saying as well. And I would say that that process completely changed my viewpoint on, I would say, life and what I was meant to do. Prior to that, if you would have asked me, I would have told you I was going to be the biggest black developer in Raleigh. That's what I would have told you. After that, I told you I don't want that at all. And because I realized that chasing that level of success or that height would take me away from the things that I actually like about development. Like I like sitting on aunties and grandma's front porches and talking about, hey, what do you think should go here? And they send me across the street to Miss Barbara, and Miss Barbara send me across the street to Miss Octavia, and they all tell me and all get little nuggets. And even if I don't agree with everything that they're saying, I can take a nugget and I match it up with a person across the street, and a picture starts to form of what actually should be built in these communities. And so I did that, and that kind of started me on this journey because I'm somewhat of a overachiever. I just wanted to be the best small developer, community minded developer I could. So I know I needed to learn past development. I needed to know urban planning. I needed to know why things looked the way they looked. What was the reason behind it, the historical context, the cultural context. I needed to know all of those things. And so that kind of started me on probably a 2-year deep dive on all things development and built environment.
I love that. So how long was that? So from the time, so you were in sales, then
hmm
you do these deep dives and you self-teach, you're doing some flipping another smaller multifamily in the meantime, and then you take on this project. What kind of time frame was that in?
Oh, you're talking from the time. So transparently, I just got out of sales in March of last year. And that was because my wife was like, hey, when you leave out of here and go to work, you come back, you leave out of here happy, you come back drained. She was like, whenever you go to any community meetings or you got to do anything with the community, you leave out of here in a good mood and you come back energized. Yeah, that is what you're supposed to be doing. Whatever that is. I don't quite understand it, but whatever that is, that's what you're supposed to be doing. And so I took a leap of faith and said, all right, I'm gonna leave this job that I know like the back of my hand. What I did in the meantime is I started to write, and that's how Kristi found me. I started to just write about my thoughts and ideas and viewpoints on the built environment. And this is, you're talking from the time I first picked up Rich Dad Poor Dad until today, you're talking at least 10 years. 10 years. Yeah, at least 10 years. From the time I first flipped a home, or even from the time I first realized what real estate development was, or low income housing tax credits were, that was in COVID. I didn't even know they existed. I didn't know individuals could be developers. That's how naive I was. Because in my community, nobody looked like me was developing anything.
I wouldn't even say it's naive. It's literally why we have this podcast because we don't even know that we can be developers, and that's
hmm
literally the barrier we're trying to break down.
Yep, yep. So 100%. So that's exactly what it took me a long while. It took me many books that I have back here, reading books and listening to podcasts and articles and just absorbing as much information as I possibly could because I wanted to learn by doing. I learned better that way. I graduated from North Carolina Central University, which is a black college here in North Carolina, about 30 minutes west of Raleigh and Durham. And I could have went back to school and got my MBA and with a concentration in real estate, but like I want to be a practitioner. I don't want to teach in class. If I teach you in a class, it's because I want to show you how it actually works in the real world. And so I would much rather take the path that's uncharted, and that's what I did. And so started to write about my ideas, started to write about some of the things that I think I benefit from coming from a different industry, is that I would notice things that people that are native to this industry just didn't notice and they just didn't pick up on because it's the same thing that everybody's always done. And I would notice like, hey, you do know that like if you two departments just talk, that we could figure all of this out. Or like I would ask the city, like, hey, do you know that lenders still require parking? And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, you got rid of the parking minimum in Raleigh, which I'm thankful for. I said, but when I go to bring this to a bank, they still require parking. So while you did do a good job and it's a hand clap, that's not the whole job. And so little things like that is that I don't think people would bring back that information to them to give them that insight or even give them insight to how difficult it is as a small developer to work with the city on RFPs. Like it's almost impossible because as a smaller developer, when you're first starting out, you're not going to have the experience that they're going to rank really, really high. And to respond to an RFP is minimum $8,000. And that's if you got friends and connections that are going to do some favors for you. And so I told them, like, I don't have $8,000 to just give to you on a maybe. And in fact, there's going to be somebody else that's probably going to get this over me. I can take that $8,000 and put it into due diligence for a real piece of land and move forward there. Um, so yeah, it was a happy accident that I found the built environment. I wouldn't trade it for the world. My wife often asks me, do I wish I found it in college? No, because I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't have the viewpoint that I have on the world, on society, on just myself in general, and the things I'm willing to do and willing and not willing to do because I'm a different person. And so everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to happen, and I'm thankful for that. I get a chance to every day operate in a built environment. I'm ecstatic to wake up. I get a chance to, on two fronts, I'm a urban design and strategy consultant for a planning firm out of Erie called R Plan, and then also I have my Gracely development company that I operate as well. So I get to wake up and do cool things every day, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
That's amazing, and I appreciate you providing color to the journey because to your point, it took you 10 years to get to where you're at, and I think there's a lot of people out there that when they don't experience, what their expectations are in a short period of time, they get disillusioned or disheartened. But what they don't realize is that you're creating a foundation that you're going to build on for the rest of your career. Because I'm assuming that you're going to be in this career for another, hopefully, 50 years. Your mindset is I want to be doing this until I can't do it anymore. And so I think that's the perspective you have to take. And I also appreciate the perspective you shared about your previous experience, because what you often find out is that you do gain a lot of insights from other industries. I came from technology and then got into brokerage and investing and developing. And I can tell you 100% that my experience in that space has helped me immensely in what I'm doing currently. And, to your point, you could have started when you were 22 and who knows what you would have been, where you would have been today. But I would say that you probably have gained much more insight given the fact that you were in sales and you've refined those skills, because regardless of what industry you're in, you need to be an excellent salesperson because you're having to convince the city that this is a good idea. You're having to go and meet with your neighbors and your aunties and whoever else to say, hey, this is the vision we're creating, and you have to get everyone on board and put all the pieces together. So I think sales is the number one skill that people need to learn, regardless of what industry they're in. So I think you've, obviously bridged that gap, and it's led to where you're at today.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Sales is just about communication, just being able to communicate. But the what I will say about my journey is that like it's not just the 10 years. It's um 10 years of nobody knowing who I am, and I still get up every day
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
as if it already exists.
you
That's
manifest.
Yeah, that is the key. And I was doing this all on the side. I still had a full-time job, a sales career with a wife and two kids. So everything that I was doing was in my free time while
Mhm.
everybody else is out going to the bar. I got my head in a book. I have draft paper where I'm drafting sketches so I can figure out how to sketch myself and learn how to do a site plan myself so I didn't have to pay somebody. Those are all the things I'm doing year after year. I know Southeast Raleigh so well because I've looked at almost every piece of land that exists in Southeast Raleigh. If you can drop a pin and tell me the address, I can probably tell you what it's zoned for, and I might even be able to tell you who owns it. That's how often I would do this. And I would do it day in and day out because I had the mentality of, and I still have this mentality, like, once I get there, you can't take it away from me.
Mhm.
So whether it takes me 10, 12, 15, I don't care. When I get there, I'm there, and there's nothing anybody else is going to be able to do about it. So I don't care if it takes me 5, 10, 15 years, that's fine. I'll keep my head down, one foot in front of the other, because life is like that. There's going to be some seasons where, like right now, life is a sprint. I have a bunch of work. I'm always busy. I'm thankful for it. But then there's sometimes when like you're gonna feel like you're crawling or feel like the only way you can move is if you pick your leg up and put it in front of the other leg. But you have to show up at each one of those days as if it already, whatever you have in your mind already exists. And that's the way I operated. Like there was years where the only people that heard me talk about development was my wife and some of my friends. Like for years, while I was understanding my thought process while I was learning and developing a thesis and a point of view, I was just by myself, just
Mhm.
learning. And then I got to the point where, and it took my wife even, my wife is the reason why I started writing about it. Like all of these concepts that I write about and ideas that I write, these are stuff that she's heard. These are stuff that when I'm talking to my friends, I'm highlighting these things as we're driving down the street. You have to be willing to put in the work and nobody giving you any credit for it. And I've done
And when
things in the
you were,
community. Okay.
as you were doing that, was it the writing that then led to the consulting that happened first, or did you get into your first deal? Which one of those came first?
Writing and then consulting. So I found the same way you found me is the same way my business partner found me in consulting. She read one of my articles. We set up a meeting. I'm also a firm believer in I take meetings with anyone because you never know who you're talking to and what that person may be able to do for you. And so I take meetings with anybody. I'll give anybody 30 minutes. It's worth it to me in the long run. Even if I don't get anything from that 30 minutes, my hopes is that I can give them something in that 30 minutes. But yeah, I was writing. My co-founder reached out to me, was like, "Hey, I'm venturing out on my own," and she came from a traditional planning firm. It's like, hey, I want to do things different. And I was like, hey, you do know my background is not in planning. I just want to let you know that. And she was like, I don't care. That's exactly why I'm coming to you. Because I want somebody that looks at things with fresh eyes. And we worked on a couple projects together. It's like I was just like a consultant working with her. And then eventually she was like, hey, we need to do this for real because I think we can do some really, really cool things. And that started the journey of us kind of working together and working with multiple cities and working with developers and nonprofits and cities and all everywhere in between on various different projects.
We've had some other people on, like we had Brian, who specializes in ADUs, where he got his foot in through working for a company and getting reps in from working on other people's projects, and then
Hmm.
being like, cool, now I'm going to do my own while doing it because I see and understand this. So I think that's a huge way. I mean, heck, I worked for developers for several years before I ended up starting my own company. Same way, you're learning on someone else's dime. So what types of clients and projects did you guys end up? Did you end up working on? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so we do a lot of strategic plans, 5 year like strategic plans. We work with so a couple in the city of Raleigh, a couple land trusts, so Raleigh area land trusts. She's located in Erie. Do a lot of work with the EDDC there, which is their downtown economic development corporation, putting together kind of strategic 5 year plans so that way they have um, a launch point and know exactly where they're going. Work with one of the neighborhood groups in Erie, our West Bay Front, and worked on their kind of strategic planning, downtown alliance in Erie. So a lot of kind of forward thinking about how things are going to lay out, looking at how to achieve some of the goals that they want to achieve and how to lay out a plan for that. So if, for instance, if like right now I'm working with the city of Raleigh and they reach out to me because they want to get more what they call emerging developers into the space. And so they reached out to me to figure out what that looks like. How can we get that to happen? And so I will walk them through kind of the barriers that it is from a personal point of view and what they can do to kind of get around those barriers. But also part of that is making sure that you're educated. So I'm not just coming to them saying, hey, this is something good you can do for the community. I'm also saying, hey, this also makes financial sense. This also makes the city more money. This also closes the gap of affordable housing that most cities currently have. And because we all think that the big developers that are doing 200 and 300 units at a time are going to be the ones closing the gap. And the reality is, if they could build more, they would. They have shareholders that they have to behold to, and so they have to get certain returns. So if they could squeeze another nickel out of a dollar, they would. They're working at capacity. Reality is, it's going to take people like me and you on this call. It's going to take 100, 200, 300 of us building a duplex here, a triplex here, fourplex over there. Somebody's building a 10plex, building a small little multifamily with a mixed use grocery store at the bottom in the middle of the community. That's who, all collectively, if we're doing that, that's who is going to close this gap. It's not going to be the big boys. They are the one maintaining the status quo that we have. If you're going to close that gap, it's going to take us.
Hey, can we chat for a second? Since you're listening to this podcast, you're already thinking like a developer. You see the potential in your community, and you're ready to do more than just watch from the sidelines. That's exactly why we created the Local Developer Vault. It's a free resource full of tools, templates, and trainings to help you take action. And here's the best part. When you sign up, you'll also get access to our local real estate developer community. It's full of people just like you who are making real things happen in their neighborhoods. So don't just listen to the stories. Become the next one that we spotlight on our show. The link in the show notes to unlock the vault and join our movement.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that cities around the country are starting to become more aware of the fact that there needs to be more deliberate focus on enabling people that aren't of that larger stature of development to be able to make it easy for them. Because I think the challenge with a lot of people, I'm sure you've seen this in your market, is that the process to do things with the city can be quite cumbersome. And unless you have the time, the resources, and the relationships to be able to navigate those, a lot of people just don't even pursue it because of the barriers that are in front of them. And so, that's one thing that I've tried to advocate for locally, just with all the things that I'm involved in, to essentially say to the city, like, make it easier. The rezoning process for an uncontentious piece of property shouldn't take a year. I mean, that is unbelievable. The amount of friction you're creating for people that aren't necessarily the big boys is going to cause a lot of them just not to move forward with different projects. So there's got to be ways we navigate the zoning process to shrink the timeline and also make it more affordable to get in, because and obviously each city is different based on what the requirements of the city are, but in our case we have to have planned development. You can't just say, oh, I want to rezone this property from X to Y. And fair enough, I understand the reasoning behind it, but you have to submit plans, you have to submit as-built, you have to submit all these different things, and that's $15,000 right there. And if you involve an attorney, that's another $10,000.
Yep, 100%.
How are you able to bridge the gap with someone who is just getting started that doesn't have the $25,000 to take a risk on rezoning? Because rezoning is not a foregone conclusion, and so. Yeah, I mean it's kind of a conundrum that I think a lot of cities are starting to wake up to, because it is limiting the potential for different areas as a result of those pieces of legislation. So
Absolutely. And I think sometimes what I've found is that working with the city is that they have good intentions. They're not doing this to stop things from happening. They're not, for the most part. There might be some bad apples, which is going to happen, but for the most part, that's not what they're doing. It's just that they don't know the other side of the table. when they put that policy in place, they don't know what it looks like to respond from the other side of the table, which I try to provide a lot of feedback to them around what it looks like to even working in the permit portal.
Mhm.
I showed them I did what's called the Planning Academy here in Raleigh. It was in the first ever Planning Academy, and the Planning Academy shows regular citizens what the development process looks like. And so we got to the part where they were showing the permit portal, and they were so hype about this permit portal. It's like, oh, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I was like, hey, had any of you ever actually submitted a permit before? And it was like, no. I said, well, this is perfect because I have one that I submitted not too long ago that I can show you. And I hooked up and I showed them and I said, hey, all of you all are planners. All of the citizens in here, I know more about development than everybody in the room, probably other than you all. And I probably know more about than you all. I want you to read the response that I got from this permit and tell me who I'm supposed to call and how I'm supposed to get that information. And none of them could decipher it. And I said, this is the problem. You have people that are just regurgitating the UDO code instead of turning the UDO code into regular human language. So the regular human being can say, I need to call the architect and the engineer to review X. And stuff like that gets lost. And so now you get barriers to entry and you get people that just get frustrated by the entire process. And it's not just barriers to entry, but it's also who gets to build. We don't realize how much of the built environment affects just our lives. It affects where your kids go to school, where they grow up. It affects what you get to eat, when you get to eat it. And depending on if you got a spouse, it might affect where you meet your spouse. And the reality is, the built environment that we live in was built by old white men. It's just a reality. And we know what that built environment looks like. We need more voices at the table. We need more perspectives. We need more ideas from other people. There should be more people of color. There should be more women at the table. Like when I go to conferences, there's 5 people that look like me. Maybe. Like I don't have, I rarely I have a collection of people here in the Triangle area, and there's probably 7 or 8 of us, but that's it, and that's a problem because if we're only telling the story from one perspective, then we're not. It's not actually the best perspective. It's just the only one that
It
is
doesn't include all of us. It's just the one that who's known how to do it the whole time. Again, to say this is why Raphael and I started the pod, is that we know that there are capable people in our communities. And I love the stat that we have 16,000 communities in the US that have a population of less than 10,000 people. If you can flip a house, you can flip that downtown mixed use building and impact so many more lives. And by just letting people know, hey, you can do this too, and to work with the local officials to say, hey, we need translators because the public sector, they want to do these projects, they don't know how to get through. You guys know your process, but you don't understand the business side. And just working with those communities who are willing to go, hey, yeah, that makes sense. And I've found so many times in my career that I do need to explain the business side to the jurisdictions I'm in. And it could be small towns, but it could also be a city of San Diego or San Francisco or LA. And I go, here is what this impact means. If you want me to close this driveway, it means X, Y, and Z to the gas station and this and that, and how that all impacts the bigger picture. So it's a lot of educating for sure.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
also to kind of highlight what you've described, I mean, part of the mission of this podcast is to inspire people to take on community-driven development, because what you described regarding people who have typically been involved in development is that they don't have a perspective of people in different communities and what is actually needed in those communities. They just see, this piece of land. It's like, oh, we're just going to put something here. How many times have you seen developments proposed in different areas, and you're like, they obviously didn't have any they didn't have any feedback from anyone in that community. They just put some boxes together, threw it on the site, and they said, okay, well, this will make sense for what we need as far as if it's a big box retailer or whatever else. And so I think that, to your point, I think it's important to have these types of conversations, because instead of having development happen to you, you want it to happen for you. And in order to do that, you have to have these conversations. You have to be kind of championing those activities in different areas, and who better to do it than someone who's in the community, So
Exactly.
Exactly. It should
Yeah, I've been
start.
talking with the Blue Zone group who studied, how why people live to be over 100, and they've really come down to the fact it's their built environment around them. And when you have community, when you have connection, when it's easier to walk to the grocery store than drive, when it's your habits. And I think there's a stat that you only go like 80% or 90% of your time is spent within a 20-mile radius of your home. So if you think about that, your built environment around you plays a huge factor. And we just don't even think about it because it is what it is. But yet as developers and as people in our communities, we can play a big role in the how that changes.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm a huge proponent that we need to shift how development operates. Like right now, community engagement is a checkbox, and the community feels that. If you ever been a part of the community and sat in one of those meetings, you can feel that the decision was already made before you walked in the room, that they're just informing you of that decision. And that is not what community engagement is. Community engagement is coming to the community saying, hey, we want to do something here. What do we think should go here? And figure out based off the feedback that you get from that community and a combination of what's actually viable for the site, because there is realities that we have to take things to the bank and things of that nature. And so I educate both sides. I let my community know, like, hey, a swimming pool would be great there, but that's not the best use of that land. And so we need to think of something that'll help more people. And so I think it should all start with community engagement on all levels. Every developer, if you start there, I look at like myself as like somebody, instead of having a developer that has their, hey, these are my floor plans that I build and
Here's my
I go all
prototype.
around.
That's it.
This is what I do and I just stamp them out. I like to think of myself, I have a tool belt and I go in the community and we figure out what is wrong. And there's sometimes I need to bring out the hammer, but there's sometimes I need the screwdriver. And then there's sometimes I need my saw. And so it all looks different. I'm twisting and changing what needs to be done based on the environment that it's in, the cultural context. Like that's part of it that we don't talk about, that like there are developers that go into communities that don't understand the cultural context of the community. We just had a rezoning that I stood up, and most developers won't stand up against other developers, but I'm a community member first before I put my developer hat on. And I stood up and before the city council and told them, hey, this area it is borderline a floodplain, 100-year floodplain. And as we've seen, those 100-year floodplains have rapidly turning into 50-year floodplains. And so his bargaining chip was to bargain and say, hey, well, I'll put affordable housing on the lot. And I stood there and I said, that is the most disrespectful thing you can do, is you're going to take the most vulnerable of our population and put them on land that you wouldn't put your kids on. And I was like, that's the problem. We don't have a historical understanding of the neighborhood and the community that you're in. Because had he had that understanding that in Southeast Raleigh, the most of the black people in Raleigh live in Southeast Raleigh. That's not by happenstance. There's a reason for that. It was called the Bottoms. It was all swampland. Nobody wanted it. That's why we were allowed to stay here. And so if you had a cultural understanding and took time to understand the neighborhood, you would have known that that was never going to fly. And it's like instead of taking the time so you don't tarnish your name as a developer, because now I know that developer's name ingrained in my head. And I'm gonna be paying attention to whatever he tries to do. And so is the community. Instead of learning about the community that you want to do business with. And so we just have to require more of not just the community we do need to require, but also we got to require more of developers and ourselves. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think shifting perspective away from dollars, just only dollars and cents, because I feel like that's unfortunately the approach that many people take, is they try to maximize every bit of value they can achieve, which is another misnomer in my case. Like whenever people say, "Oh, I'm adding value to something," I'm like, "Are you really adding value? You know, you're coming in, you're putting some paint and petunias and raising rents by $100. Is that really adding value?" I think that's extracting value from community, and that's where and we could talk about this for an hour and a half about these multifamily syndicators over the last 5 years,
Oh my God.
kind of nauseating, but it's part of it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure they're making good money, and especially during those times. And now there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot that are struggling as a result of those
Mm-hmm.
decisions. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that when we shift perspective away from just strictly dollars and cents, and I'm not saying dollars and cents isn't important, because of course you need to be able to make money, otherwise the deal's not going to work. It's just no one's going to go bankrupt trying to make a development happen. But I think you do have to have it's a colored perspective where it says, okay, we do have this, it makes sense economically, but how can we structure it so that even if what we decide to do doesn't kind of erode some of that profitability, but it does provide something to the community that they're actually going to engage with and value, and hopefully adds quote unquote value to the community, then you need to be okay with making that decision, because overall it's going to bring up the entire area.
I think that's where the disconnect is. If you're an outside developer coming in, you truly probably don't care about that community. You care
Mm-hmm.
about your investors, your returns. Maybe it's your national tenant that you're working with to put in the prototype. Maybe it's just, hey, I know that this type of thing worked in another community. I'm going to try it here. And I think that's where the more we can empower our locals to be the ones who are the developers, the more that it gets away from the dollars and cents, because you're also getting the value of, you get to go there. You get to hang out with your community members there. You get to live there. You get to see how your community gets elevated and how your action now inspired 3 other people to go do similar projects. And now you're bringing up the entire community. So, I mean, it's something that it'll take time to turn things to a new angle, a new perspective, but it's something that clearly all 3 of us are passionate about doing and sharing and getting out there.
Yep, yep. And we have to highlight that. We have to make sure that it's known, that it's talked about, that it's not something that is an afterthought, that we are bringing it to the forefront. Because I go to real estate conferences all the time, and specifically, I don't look mainly in affordable housing, not so much in just regular real estate, because every real estate market is different. But when you're in affordable housing, you're dealing with a population that is the most sensitive of our population. And I've been to multiple affordable housing conferences where I'm there for an hour before panelists even talk about the humans that are going to be living in those units. They're talking pro forma this and LIHTC that, and HUD this, and construction costs that. And I'm like, what about the humans? What about the people? And I was like, that is the disconnect, is that like they're designing from and I've wrote about this, they're designing from a spreadsheet. And people like you and me, I'm not designing from a spreadsheet. When I think about the tenants, I'm thinking about how my aunt could stay here, and how my cousin would stay here, and how they would be able to navigate, and thinking about how that building is going to interact with the buildings near it. And is it close to a grocery store? I'm thinking about all of those things because I'm thinking about the quality of life of the humans that are going to be living in that building, and not just whether or not the building is going to make money. Yes, I know we got to make money. This is capitalism. We got to keep the lights on. But you don't have to do it at the detriment of of humans. Like, you can do both. It is possible. I know the world will tell you different, and recent events will tell you different, and how most people that operate in capitalism will tell you different, but it is possible to do right by people and still make a living. It is possible. You might not be a billionaire, you might not drive a Bugatti, but you can make a living and do right by people. And it is
Absolutely.
possible. And we have to show people that it's possible.
Definitely. So one thing I'm curious about is, you've described a little bit about your past experiences. We've talked about your thesis, about how you approach the planning process and all the consulting work you've done. I guess what is your end goal with the consulting firm? And ultimately, you kind of highlighted a project that you got roped into for the city regarding the transit lines and that sort of thing. I guess, what's your vision for kind of putting some of that all together going forward over the next 5 to 10 years?
Absolutely. So the consulting piece, we're just taking it, going at it day at a time. It's something that I say I accidentally fell into because I was trying to be a better developer. But we are trying to do things a little different. We aren't real big on creating what in the planning world what they call shelf documents. We aren't just, hey, we're going to create this document and everybody's going to be hype, and then after the meeting, it's going to go in a cabinet and nobody's ever going to do anything. In fact, we won't work with organizations that's what they're trying to do. It's a waste of my time. I want to see stuff get done. I want to see changes being made, things being implemented, and be a part of. I want to, especially on the planning side, I want to come into a space and be like, hey, prior to us coming here and helping them, this didn't exist. And now it does. And now this person is able to get an opportunity, and this person is able to get an opportunity. Those are the things that I want to say when it's all said and done. And then from a development point of view, I have no other way to say this. I want to build cool shit in my community. That's the only way I can put it. I want to build cool shit in my community that I know that my community needs. And I have no desire to really go outside of that. Now, if there are other communities that look like mine that I can speak to directly and that I know natively, cool. Have I partnered with bigger developers on bigger projects? Absolutely. But if you're asking me what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, 5 to 50 units for the rest of my life. That's it. 5 to
Mixing
50
middle,
units
infill development,
for the
creating the
rest of my
products
life.
that you need. Yeah.
Could care how big, how many, that is all that I'm doing. And because I can be with the people. I don't I dress, this is how I dress. This is how I talk. This is the way I look. I'm not changing it. I'm not toning it down. I'm not tweaking it. I show up in every meeting myself because I also, part of this is me showing up the way I show up. It gives other people permission to show up as themselves.
Not to think they need to achieve something or put on a front to be something else to be in the room. It's I am who I am. You can be who you are. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
So what type
Exactly.
of partners as you go into that, who do you think your closest collaborating partners will be as you guys grow this vision and the community?
So I try to do a lot of work with the city, if I'm being honest, because I think the city can be a catalyst for change. I think when there are spaces that need revitalization, you need a spark. And a lot of times the city can provide that spark. And then once the spark is there, no developer wants to be number one in the space. In fact, they probably want to be like number 3 or 4. Like that's where the sweet spot is. It's like, or it's already in motion, but it's not late stage motion where I'm paying top dollar. If I can get the city to do things and spark the right projects, the public
You're
sector,
de-risking it. It's
yeah,
it's de-risking it for everyone else. The reason people want to be second or third is that you've proven the concept, you've shown it works, you can shown that you can get the returns. It means lending's going to be easier, raising capital is going to be easier, finding the contractors, getting the tenants, it's all going to be easier at that point. So you're right. The hardest one, the most friction is getting those first projects done. So public-private partnerships, working with the local government, maybe the land trusts, and creating that model and that blueprint to where other people can go, okay. And it de-risks it for other developers, but it also de-risks it for emerging developers who are like, I'm on the sideline. I'm, oh, should I? So I think it's a big ask, just like everything else that is taking it to kickstart. But once that gets traction, you've got the blueprint to take that everywhere and to do that, which is awesome.
100%. And I've known my natural disposition, it might not come off that way, but I'm an introvert by nature. I've had to learn to not be an introvert because I've learned that my voice matters and my voice carries and it has impact. And so I've had to learn to use it more. I used to be the type that, like, if I would come in a room, I would sit in the corner and observe everybody. I've learned that that is not my role in life. That is not the sacrifice. My sacrifice is I have to get out of that. And so I work with the city. I'm in meetings with the city. I'm on Zoom calls with the city. I'm doing whatever I can because what I also want to do is I want to make the space better for everybody that comes behind me. Yeah, I want to essentially help hold the door open. I don't want anybody to have a difficult time navigating these waters as I have. I want to make it that much easier. I want to lay breadcrumbs so they can chart their way to get exactly to where I am. And by doing that, I touch on every sector. I've worked with the county, I've worked with the city, I work with nonprofit developers on what they can do, the big boys, the Harmony Housings of the world and Lennars. I've talked to all of them to say, hey, you should help these smaller developers. It helps the entire ecosystem. They are going to know more about that neighborhood, that city, than you will ever know. And so it behooves you to partner with them and get in, because eventually in the city of Raleigh, they're not making any more land. So there's not a whole lot of 5, 10, 15 acre tracts of land that you're going to be able to just gobble up. It's going to dwindle down. And eventually you're going to be like, oh, now we got to go to these infill lots. Well, if you don't have a connection to the city, if you don't have somebody that's tapped into the soil, you can't go. And so if you don't start building that pipeline and building those relationships now, then when it comes time for you to have to come into the city, you're not going to have anybody that's going to champion you. And I've had developers that I have relationships with that have brought me on as a consultant to literally just speak to the people, literally just come in and say, hey, I need you to go figure out what they want, because they're not going to listen to us because we look different. And they understand that. And I go in and have conversations and sit down and sit at people's kitchen tables and drink sweet tea and talk to them about, what do you want to exist? They want to hear from you. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm sitting in your kitchen. I also do this, so I'm going to let them know that they're not going to be able to get over, because I can be paid, I can't be bought. And so I'll be honest. If they're trying to get over, I will tell you they're trying to get over. And I have told people that developers are trying to get over, and I've told them to their face, because I've spent my whole life developing my word and my brand, personal brand, and I'm not gonna get rid of that or jeopardize that for anybody. Because once I lose that, I lose all credibility with my community, and that won't happen.
No, I couldn't agree more, man. I think you've done a great job thus far, and I'm really excited to continue to follow along with what you got going on. And that's one of the cool things about this podcast is we get to meet people from all across the country that are doing really cool projects, and I think it's gonna be an exciting. It's gonna be exciting to watch what you end up doing over the next several years, and hopefully we can be part of that in some capacity, whether that's just advocating for what you got going, or again getting involved in some way. One thing I'm curious about is obviously our target demographic with this podcast is typically those individuals who kind of started out like you. They were working or are currently working in a career that's ancillary to real estate development. Maybe they've been driving by that one mixed-use building in their community for years, and they're always wondering, wow, what if we could take that particular building and turn it into something different? Or maybe they see a lot that has been vacant for a while and it's overgrown, and they want to build a house on it, or some form of infill or larger development. But what advice would you give to those type of individuals who are kind of in the in-between phase where they haven't really taken the leap yet, but are again wanting to kind of pursue development as a career, or maybe not even as a career, maybe it always ends up being something that's kind of ancillary to their main career, but they just want to make a positive impact?
Absolutely. So as far as just getting involved, just get started. Just do something. You have to. You will learn so much. You're going to make all of the mistakes. You are not, even if you break even on a flip, that is fine. You will learn. I have learned through the process of having done renovations and building new construction, it is 10 times harder to do renovations than it is new construction. New construction is A, B, C, D, done.
Mm-hmm.
It's predictable. Renovations, once you open up a wall, you have no clue what's going to happen. I've pulled back floor panels and the entire underfloor was rotted out, and I didn't know. You have to take up everything and redo it. So get started. And it can be as simple as a bathroom renovation. It can be that simple. It doesn't have to be something, a huge lift. What you want is momentum. Because once you get that first deal and you do the first deal, you will have the energy and the know-how and the stick to it in this and wanting to figure it out. You'll try to go find out the next deal. And so you don't have to go at it all at once. Like the deals that I do now were deals that I had in my head 5 years ago. The deals that I have in my head now, I cannot do yet. I don't have the skill set yet. But I see it vividly. And so I'll do what I can right now. Today, this is the deal that I can do. And I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. And then the next deal and the next deal. And what happens is you build up credibility. And when you build up credibility, then you can really call your own shot. Once you have the credibility of they do quality projects and they get things done, when you bring that wild idea to that small town and they've never seen anything like that before, they're going to trust you because they've seen you renovate 5 duplexes already. They've seen you renovate that storefront already. So you have to just get started. And however you need to get started, whether that's you need to work a second job to save some money, whether it's you need to owner finance on terms, whatever it is to get into the deal, get into your first deal. Don't wait. There's not enough books you can read that is going to prepare you for it. Yes, do you need to have base level knowledge? 100%. Once you have the base level knowledge, experience is going to be much more of a teacher than anything else.
So true. So true. And you'll never have it all figured out. I've done hundreds of projects, and there's still something that a new jurisdiction or a new type of project or a different overlay comes up, and it's why you have a team of people around you so you can mitigate the risk along the way. And then as things come up, that's what a developer does. You problem solve. So just get in, roll your sleeves up, and give it a shot. Maybe don't do the massive project that can completely take you down, but start small. Start with something that can positively impact your community and go from there. So,
100%.
well, thank you so much, Desmond, for joining us. How can people follow along to what you're doing, what you're writing about, your consulting, and anything else that you want to share?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I write a Substack once a week. It's usually on Thursdays when I drop my Substack. It's theemergingdeveloper.substack.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I write on LinkedIn as well. Just Desmond Dunn. If you search Desmond Dunn, multiple people probably pop up, but nobody with locks and a nose ring like myself. And if you're looking for our consulting company, it's called R Plan, R as in the letter R dot plan. And like I said, if you need any help in any municipalities or nonprofits or any other organizations that need help, we are here to help. But yeah, I write about different various topics on the built environment, from RFPs to modular housing to the size of homes are too big and we need starter homes back, and everywhere in between. I treat it as a thesis, an open thesis and working thesis. So if I'm willing to change my mind with new information. So if you see something, you read it and you think that it's off, and we can have a civil discourse about it, so that way I can get to the actual right answer. That's all I care about, is getting to the right answer. I don't care about being right.
Well, that's awesome. And we'll make sure to include all that in the show notes. So if you guys are watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the description. If you guys are listening to this in a podcast format, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it'll be in the description as well. So, well, Desmond, we really do appreciate your time. It's an honor to meet you, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch. That's one of the, again, I kind of highlighted again, that's one of the cool things about this podcast is we're kind of building a community of people who are doing awesome projects in the future. And stay tuned. We'll definitely be announcing something hopefully this year where we can have like either a mini conference or a get together where we start building a local developer community that, shares ideas and gets together and hopefully becomes kind of a catalyst for something greater. So,
Yep.
Desmond,
Absolutely.
No, really appreciate your time. For those of you guys who are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. It makes a huge impact on our ability to broaden our audience, and we greatly appreciate the support. Along with that, if you guys are watching this in a podcast format, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please, please, please leave a 5-star review. The more people that leave 5-star reviews, the more impressions we get, and the more impressions we get, hopefully more people get inspired to take on their first real estate development project. So thanks again so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.